Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening,
Good
where
morning.
you're
Good
viewing
day.
from.
Good day.
This is Tara Thompson, and you tuned into the coffee break. And we're hosting a very, 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 very special show with a very, very, very special guest. As you know, Mother's Day is May 12th, is coming up very, very fast. And we have selected a individual that had a great, great relationship with his mom, a great respect for his mom, and a great respect for individuals in the community. And so we just wanted to bring him on to talk a little bit about his mother and his relationship with his mother, and just give us some insight on, what true, pure love for mothers look like. And so without further ado, I wanted to introduce former Councilman John H. Sanders. And before we get started with the interview, John, I would just like for you to give us a little background information on you, bio information, where you're from, what you do, all of those good things.
Born, raised on the west side of San Antonio, right off of I-10 and Culebra. Um, my first 9 years of schooling were in all black schools, Grant Elementary in Dunbar, which we are now. Some of us who are alumni of those schools have formed a committee to have a historical designation of our area where we went to school on the west side, because those buildings are no longer there. Further, when I finished high school, graduated at 17, started my other form of education at San Antonio College, and which also started my activist education and activity at San Antonio College. And from there through St. Philip's, Our Lady of the Lake, I think, well, I wasn't kicked out of those schools with those transfers.
Mm-hmm.
Started my professional work career at the Texas Workforce Commission at the age of 19. Did
Wow.
30-year career there, and of course, a number of other activities. Became president of Organization United for Eastside Development. I think I was 23. That was 9 years. Served on a number of boards in our community, other than my activist coalition. That was the L. Austin Community Center. Served on L. Austin's board for 9 years. Sickle cell anemia,
Wow.
UCPPOC, and San Antonio Fighting Back for
Wow.
something like 18 years. Had the privilege to serve my community in elected office. I had two particular offices, one on the Edwards Aquifer Authority, the initial Edwards Aquifer Authority. I was first appointed by our great state representative, Karen Jones. Uh, then subsequently became city councilman, ran for city council, became city council.
Wow. So that's awesome. You have an awesome, awesome track record of service. And, we're all proud of you. And I know that your mother was proud of you
Yeah.
as well. So I wanted to ask you, since this is a Mother's Day special, this is a son's love for his mother. And so I wanted to first ask you, you did a lot of stuff and things in the community. You served in a lot of capacities, and you started young. When you were
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
in your mother's home. So how
Exactly.
how did your mother influence you, or to live a life of service?
That's a very, very good question, because I saw the way my mother's love served us, first her family,
Mm.
and the commitment and the dedication she had to her children. My mother was born during the time, September 25th, 1910,
Wow.
through Jim Crow. My parents were married 13 and a half years before my older sister was born. So my mother was 42 years old when I was born. And so
Wow.
I had a very aged mother. So seeing the kind of nurturing and stuff that she always had a great empathy for people who were less fortunate or downtrodden. So I guess I saw those examples growing up, from the time at West End Church, before I even accepted my call to the ministry, as I was a Sunday school teacher, and during the summertime, vacation Bible schools and all that, you learn. If you learn the life of Jesus and how he sacrificed and how he told us to love one another as I have loved you, that's a pretty hard task. So he gave me the spirit to want to be a servant and to want to give the gifts that I understood that were growing in me, to use them for the betterment of my people.
Wow. So it appears that you were kind of born with special gifts to begin with, and the innate ability to serve and have compassion for people. So when you got involved in the civil rights movement, you were a young man. And so how did your mom feel about you getting involved with all of these different
My
activities?
mother was scared to death for me and those of us, my generation at that time, who were young activists, because at a time, my mother knew that we were receiving threats, because of our boldness and our forthrightness, and we were threatened. We were very articulate about our positions in community. This is during the 70s and the 80s. In that particular time, this is during the time when we were protesting police brutality, we were discrimination in housing. I began at San Antonio College during the time of the fight against apartheid in South Africa. And when we discovered that we were buying and we were utilizing and putting on display the Krugerrand coin, which was the gold piece of South Africa, and that we were part of the enslavement of our own brothers and sisters, that just gave me a whole international, global connection to my people. And that's what started what I discovered I had, righteous indignation. And so that started that, along with what was going on at San Antonio College at the time that we were protesting. And so it all just spilled up from there. And we learned how to do it, and we learned how not to do it as we move forward into our adulthood. And that's how that sparked. And my mother was always concerned. I can remember times she'd ask, why you? Why do you have to be able to, why do you have, and I always took it back to, Mom, I almost wasn't here.
Mm,
My mother was in a coma for a
wow.
little over a week when my sister was born. And from the stories of the neighbors when I was coming up, they were planning her funeral
Wow.
because they didn't think she was going to make it. This is 1947. Yeah, my sister was born in the 40s. And so she wasn't supposed to have any more children. Doctors told her, no, don't even attempt to have it. So here I come 2 years later. So I consider myself to be what do I call myself? The immaculate inception. So I said, oh, I'm not even supposed to be here. So I became very radical, bold. I just did make it. So I
Wow.
feel God had a special plan for my life, even because my mother wasn't even supposed to even attempt to have another child.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so how did your mom influence you, and she allowed you to do the things that you were gifted to do, but how did she influence you and guide you on your journey?
The one thing, and I hear it ringing in my ear right now, like my mother always said, because during that time, our parents of those generations always told us, I'm not going to be with you always.
Hmm.
Uh, you got to learn how to do this and this on your own. But she always said, baby, no matter what you do, stay with the Lord.
Hmm.
So I always took that. I became a Sunday school teacher at 19, director of my church choir when I moved and joined Second Baptist. The Sunday after my father's funeral, who passed when I was 15 years old, and the Reverend John Henry Sanders Sr. And I went over to Second Baptist. That's where my family was. And I just went from there in the Lord, in church, in my spiritual growth, and all of that. My manhood, everything was coming on me, and my mother's love was just there, steady, and just her guiding hand on certain things about taking care of your job. Make sure you're going to work. You involved in all this other. Don't get yourself in trouble. Then you're gonna lose that job. But the Lord blessed me with a state job, which was probably at that time the most secure kind of job you could be in. And my politics, I took off. I was on leave. I made sure that I was covered if I was downtown at City Hall or something doing work hours and showed up on television or something like that, that my leave was in, because there was definitely some folks, if I wasn't, who was waiting to have my little self out of that office, out of that job. But I maneuvered that for 30 years and 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were born and raised on the east side. I mean, on the west side.
I was born and raised on the west side of San Antonio.
And so what compels you to do most of your service on the east side?
As I've always said, and then I lived on the north side
Wow.
for 8-some years on Howard Street in Almus Park. The east side was where the battle was.
Mm-hmm.
The east side was where the cultural identity of Black people in San Antonio was. It didn't matter where you lived,
Mm-hmm.
that was the battleground.
Okay.
That was the most accessible way for us to obtain power in elected office. Whether it be city council, county commissioner, school boards, or whatever, because that's where our people were. So our voting strength was there. Even though the west side had Black communities in the near west side, and then the west side out by Acme Road. But the political power to get elected was not there. So I guess, moving, I had relatives on the east side. I went to church on the east side. The TEC on Lone Oak Mall, I helped open that mall on the east side when I was working with the Employment Commission.
Wow.
Met my wife there. Everything in that particular office. She worked for the Workforce Commission at that time. And so that's where it was. And that's where the community activism was. That's where my cohorts in the movement were. So that's where the strength, the foundation, we built it from that side of town. That's where Ella Austin was. That's where UCPPOC was. That's where our nonprofits were. That mostly dealt with us. So that's where it was.
So how did your mother feel about, did she ever say, why are you always going over to the east side?
No. Oh, no. Never that. I had a car 17. She signed for me a car when I started San Antonio College. I couldn't sign for a car. The only restriction was as long as I was in school and as long as I was working, doing what I was supposed to do, I could keep that car. So I dropped out of school or got kicked out of school, she was going to sell that car. So that was motivation enough. And, once you get a car, you can travel. And back then, 69, 70, 71, gas was 50 cents a gallon. So we could go across town all day long. We were going back and forth across town all day. At 50 cents a gallon, you see, we could fill up the car with $5. And ride all day. So that's where it was. That's where, girlfriends you had were across town. So you go across town. And like I said, I'm going to church across town. So you start developing relationships and identity across town.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you could give a tribute to your mom.
To my mom.
What would it be?
A working mother. Two working parents who sacrificed for their children. We didn't know we were poor. I had a car. I never knew what it was like to be hungry, to be cold. I had winter clothes, summer clothes. I had a village. a big village that we grew up in, the world that we were in, where your neighbor could discipline you if you came home with strange friends. I had some neighbors down the street. I remember Miss Miller, Miss Brown could call you down. Boy, your mama know you have company at home. You didn't say this none of your business. You can't tell me what to do. No,
You ain't my mama.
it was yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. All of those kind of reactions. You didn't play those kind of games, and you had that kind of oversight coming up in that village. So that's what made it palatable. In the summertime, I remember my sister and we would stay with Reverend Kemple, who was the pastor of West End, moderator of the Guadalupe district. We would go down to Seguin. We would be in Seguin. As a matter of fact, the first swimming pool I ever went to swim was in Guadalupe County during the summer of the Guadalupe District Association Congress of Christian Education. West End was the moderator church. That's when all the black churches in San Antonio, except for a few, were a member of the Guadalupe District. And so the big yearly annual meeting of that district would be in Seguin. And so I would be down in Seguin for at least a week or so during the summer, between the ages of something like 6, 7 to about 10, those summers, until my mother let me stay at home by myself in the summertime. My sister and I, when we were old enough to stay at home when she was at work.
Wow, so that's a phenomenal
And like you said, and a tribute. Do whatever I was going through. My mother was like a best friend. I could tell her anything. I could talk about anything. I could come home, tell her things I had done, hadn't done, should have done, things she told me to do that I hadn't done yet, whatever. Her steadfast love, patience. She was stern now. She was stern. I mean, there were times when I was young. My mother had whipped me and my sister. We had gotten a little whippings when we were younger, but mostly my father was the disciplinarian in essence. But my mother was a disciplinarian. I could eat off her head once I got to high school. She might have been 5'6" or 5'7", but she was in charge. And in that respect and love and the way I think I honored her, God has surely blessed me, because my mother stood with her kids. That was her number one goal. Faithful. Just when we were little in the wintertime, she would put hot water bottles in our bed, because back then they didn't keep fire on all night. You turn those stoves off. Now, I don't care how cold it was, and you got in your bed under the blankets or whatever, because fire wasn't on until in the morning when they got up getting ready to go to work. So she would put hot water bottles in the bed. I remember times I would wake up at night. I want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. My mother, who worked 5 days a week, would get up, take me in the kitchen, sit at the kitchen table with me at 2 a.m. I'm sitting there eating a peanut butter jelly sandwich and drinking milk, put me back to bed, then be up at 5 o'clock in the morning fixing breakfast for everybody to get out of the house.
Wow. So that's why
you know a time in my school experience that I did not have a hot breakfast before I left home.
Wow.
When I was in the drill team at Brackenridge High School, had to be in drill team formation by 7 a.m. My mother would be up at 5. I would have a hot breakfast before I went out and caught the bus at Culebra and Zazzamar to ride to across town. That's when you could go to any school you wanted to. So as long as you could get there, you could go. So I wanted to go to Brackenridge. That's when my friends were going. I wanted to be in the ROTC there. As a matter of fact, the oldest ROTC in the state of Texas at that time. And so she would fix me breakfast and I'd get out of there, but she would be there for me like that. She was that kind of mother. Wow. So I just can't say enough about my mom's life. She lived August 22nd, 2010. She was 1 month from her 100th birthday. The greatest joy, and I thank God for it, that I think I had was when he allowed me to sit with her when the inauguration of the 40th president was happening. And I could sit there with her and ask her, did you ever think that you would live to see?
Oh, she was still alive
She was
when
still here.
Obama got in office.
She
Right.
got to see Obama and get inaugurated. She got to see the first Black president. And for someone, who come through acute segregation, Jim Crow, all of those years, and living and surviving well, and being the kind of person, mother, and contributor that she was. She had gone to Hicks Beauty School. She worked as a dental assistant. Her major job when I was coming up was with a Jewish dentist by the name of Dr. Horton. Dr. Horton, what was his first name? I don't remember his first name, but Dr. Horton. So when I'm 9 and 10, all the little cavities I had, I would bring him in on Saturday. I was getting my teeth done, things of that nature. That's how, relationships, racial relationships between workers, Black parents who worked for, Jewish or white employers or whatever. In the South, you get akin to those kind of employers, almost like you're an extension of their family.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very good time. She had a very good working relationship during those years. Yeah, of our young lives. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. So one final question. So I think about the way we were mothered,
Yes.
back in the day,
Yes.
and the way that kids are mothered
Yes.
today.
Yes.
So, kind of, how do you feel about the way that motherhood has kind of transformed or transitioned?
Well, and being in public service and working with organizations like Fighting Back, you get to see the socializational changes in cultures over the years because of people's needs.
Mm-hmm.
And young people needed some of the things that we had and mothers had when we were coming up that is not present in young life today. I feel very sorry. I've apologized. When I used to go speak at high schools to high school students, I would begin in many cases apologizing to the students because we failed to give them the tools that they needed to navigate the world of adults.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would go on to give them those keys if they wanted adults to eat out of their hand. All I had to do was learn these key words: please, thank you, yes, ma'am, no, sir, may I, can I, will you, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You have those words. You walk in with your friend asks the librarian, I would use it as an example. Your friend asked the librarian for a book. What's the name of the book? Ma'am, lady, I don't know. Yeah, no, and here you come. Miss So-and-so, is it possible that you can help me? I don't know, young man. Are you with her? Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Please. Thank you. That woman is going to go jump over hoops to help that young man who had some manners
Mm-hmm.
versus that person who did just come in and doesn't respect who they're talking to, doesn't know how to approach an adult or something. Adults love mannerable young people. They will go out of their way for a young person. Those are some keys that many of our young people have not had the opportunity to have.
So, and that probably affects their ability to
Yeah.
mother way or be a certain type.
And you just imagine, these are some of our caregivers, when I say that, generationally, who are going to be caring for us. They're going to be able to, oh, Lord, I'm fearful for my life. I'm going to tie you down in a chair, leave you in the room, don't feed you.
Because if they leave their kids, they'll leave you too.
You know what I'm saying? If they don't care about their mothers, young people who will use profanity in front of their parents, will you say some things that we would never, never consider saying to our parents and expect to be there, living there the next day.
Right. Too funny.
So no, I mean I've seen it, and of course I've had my interactions with generations. I've had an opportunity to be impact player. When you teach Sunday school for 30 years, you affect two generations. I've taught some people starting out when I was 19 and ended up also being their children's Sunday school teacher. They would tell me, "You can't retire yet. And I want you to, or bring that, I want you to do to him the same thing you did to me." And all that kind of thing. I want you to do him the same. I've been waiting to have a child. You can't retire till my child go through your Sunday school class. Yes, so I've done two generations. Yes, some mothers that I started off with at 19, now they 30, 40, and here comes their child who's a senior in high school, and I end up being their Sunday school teacher too. So that was wonderful. That's a wonderful experience.
Wow.
Yeah. So I see that impact of those young people are now adults. Some of them retiring now, that kind of thing. So that's great.
Wow. So you serve your community well. You impacted a lot of people, especially young people and seniors, and just people in the community as general. In general, you fought for justice, and you had the support of a loving, understanding,
Oh yes,
passionate mother.
Yeah, scared for me at times. Like she said, "What? Why are you now? Why not me?
Right.
Why not me? Yeah. I realized how I got here. I wasn't even supposed to be here, so I'm gonna take it to the bridge."
So I mean, it's really great to see a son.
Yeah.
Have, so much love and
Yeah, her
respect.
only son. Oh yes. And in her later life, I gave up what I had to make a residential arrangements. So I wanted my mother to be at home, and I made sure she was at home, even to the point where I had to move in her final years. And it wasn't a question. It wasn't a hesitation. Whatever I sacrificed in my own personal, social life or whatever. It was not a problem. She would apologize to me in some of her last days. We sit up and talk like she was getting ready to take a trip across the sea or something, or a cruise, because she would always prepare us. You all be prepared. She say things like, "The old lady's not gonna be with you always," da 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 da. And so when it came close to that time of her transition, she was discussing it as if, it's about that time. No, told the doctor, I'm tired. No, y'all done a wonderful job. Appreciate everything you've done. Showed me how to live. She showed me how to die, and showed me how to the next phase, prepared me for it, told me about it, gave me all the tools, taught me how to iron, how to clean, how to wash when I was young, taught me how to cook certain things. And then going up to my adulthood, I'd come home and mama, how do I do this? So, so I can do from cornbread to candy yams to greens. I can do all of those. That's from my mom. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. This has been a great, great, great conversation, and
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Opportunity to talk to you about your mom. I know how close you were to your mom.
If you recall, when I went to city council, on inauguration, she was my date.
She was there, yeah.
She was there. She was
On
there.
the front row.
Yeah. She deserves all of that. She deserves all of that. Yeah.
That's when the chambers would be filled with people when you were
Yes.
home.
Yes.
Standing room only for.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yeah, and I thank God that she was there. And she was able to see that, and she was able some of the other things because she deserves to see that because she sacrificed for her children, and that's what she wanted to see. And I owed her that minimum. Owed her that is to try to live a life that was honorable to my father, both my father and my mother. Yeah.
But she was so proud that
Yeah. Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your intimate stories about your mom. Uh, Being the TAN TV viewing audience, you've been watching TAN TV, the African American Network, where we have a local feel with a global reach, and you can watch it when you want, how you want, and where you want. And thank you, Councilman John Sanders, for coming on and sharing your love story about your mom.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All righty.
All right.
And tell everybody Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. I